And
Howdy ho, friends and foes, and welcome to Dad's on Life, your weekly episodic show, sort of, about parenting from a male perspective. I'm your host, Jay Miles, and with me, as always, are my co-host, Keith Bogan,
good afternoon, sir.
Doug Hammondike,
Howdy.
and Chad Holloway.
Good afternoon.
Today, we're going to be talking about nature versus nurture. Chad had brought this up in a topic a few weeks ago we were talking about, and we've just had some things going on, so we haven't really gotten back to it. I think we had one more show after that, and then another topic came up, so we just ran with that topic. But today we're talking about nature versus nurture. Chad, you were the one who kind of broached the subject in the first place. Why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, so nature versus nurture, really what we're talking about whenever we're talking about nature versus nurture is, is something biologically determined, like our kids look like us. That's something that's going to be more biological, more nature. The other side of the coin is nurture, and that's things that they're taught, in the home or through the families, one way or another. It could be formal teaching or it could be informal as well, just things that they pick up. In my case, for example, my son is adopted, so it's totally nurture in our situation. But at the same time, I still notice whenever we go out, like to a restaurant or something, and a waiter or waitress says, "How you guys doing? Are you guys good?" He'll say, "Oh, we're good." And that's a lot of times I'm like, that's exactly how I answer. But I think he has just picked up from me, kind of on the nature side or on the nurture side of that. So it's just interesting to see how our children develop with those different traits, whether it's biological or it's sociological, so to speak.
Anybody else completely miss in the entire year and a half that we've been doing this that Frankie's adopted?
Yeah.
I had no idea, but
You never told us,
it's so
Chad.
funny you say that, because
Never
when you talk
mentioned this
about him-
at all in a year and a half.
when you talk about him, he's so much a reflection of you, and there's so many behavioral similarities that I would never have guessed that. And that's obviously a statement toward, the fact that he's grown up in your environment, and it's a great testament to the topic that we have here. I mean, no idea. And yes, you've never mentioned it.
Well, and I guess really, I always just look at him as he's my son. So it's just, it never comes up. And sometimes, it's like, it seemed like today was very pertinent, and I could throw that out there. It's not something I think about often, really. It's just because he just is my son. And, but today talking about nature versus nurture, if he does something like me, it's nurture. It's nurture, baby.
So one more thing, those allergies hitting you a little hard in Georgia?
They are actually. I'm recovering. I had a little bit of a sinus infection going to Bogota. It's 8,500 feet. It's overcast. It's cold. It was rainy, and so I picked up something while I was there. But luckily in Colombia they have antibiotics readily available, so I got me a Z-Pack, and I'm feeling tons better than I did the other day. So I'm on the recovery side now, upswing.
Well, welcome back, sir. It's good to have you back.
Thanks. Yep. Thank you.
Keith.
I was just going to throw in that it's so fascinating to learn that Frankie's adopted in a way, because of, like I said, he's like a mirror image of you, of so many of the behaviorisms you describe. He's like you. And, you've also pointed out the ways he's not like you, and I totally get that. But I have spent all these months thinking that Frankie is like you the way Justin and Jeremy are like me. They are such mini-me's that it really cracks some people up when we're in the same room, because of just the tone of voice that comes out at times and the inflections, the pacing and the of speech and things like that. Jason, of course, has had a lot of experience listening to them, so he's heard this.
Mhm.
And but it doesn't sound like Frankie's any different in comparison than Justin and Jeremy. So I think we just, the topic's over. We're done because we figured out which one's more important now.
That speaks volumes. It does. He's absolutely right. It definitely speaks volumes, and it goes a long way to say, as a parent, if that's really that true, and it is, we've seen, what we've seen of it. It's abundantly clear. I know the girls, Keith will be able to tell you better than anybody besides for me, that there's moments where they'll do, somebody will do something, either Sadie or Delana will do something, and then I'll just go, oh boy, and roll my eyes because I'm like, oh, I did that about a million times. And the way their mannerisms and that, sometimes I'm just like, oh no, no, this isn't gonna work. Please no, please don't let this be happening. But there's a lot that they do that I just go, yeah, that's their mother. Which is fine. I mean, Elise and I had our times where we were like oil and water, and we still have our times where we're like oil and water, but it works to when it comes to them, the way we handle things and do things. It's worked pretty well, believe it or not, for the better part of 10 years, to a certain extent, with the girls at least. Obviously with other things it hasn't, but yeah. There's been moments, especially recently, as Delana gets older, and I just go, like, she'll say something and I'll just go, what'd you just say? And it's just like, and the funniest thing is, and I see why, there's times when she'll say something and I literally will call my sister or text my sister 2 seconds later and go, you're not gonna believe what she just said. I said, and I'll send it to her. She goes, what? And then it dawns on my sister that she's caught on. Delana's caught on pretty well, especially Delana, to being around my sister, and it's rubbed off on her quite significantly. Which the way my sister was at times in her teens could be kind of dangerous, though.
Because I was just gonna say, I can't wait. I know that Doug and Chad and I can't wait for the girls to do stuff in their teens and 20s that you did in your teens and 20s, because we all know what you did in your teens and 20s, and we're gonna have to come beat you up to get you to say, oh well, I guess they're just like me. And you're gonna be in a garbage can at that point.
Well, if I'm being completely honest, the dumber shit that I did, most of it didn't happen until 30. So I'm pretty okay for a while. A lot of the dumber shit happened more in the last 10 years, 12 years than anything. Thank God. Because I've actually survived it. But really, not really. Looking back from 20 to 30 or 18 to 30, there really wasn't a whole heck of a lot in there that was insane, I would say. Like I said, not like the insanity of the last 10 years. So
I feel marginally better. Marginally.
No, it's true. I mean, well, with one thing especially, that really was only over the last 7 years. So that is pretty much a 7-year process of a lot of it. So not going off on a tangent, my issues only going the time that they did caused me to not have a lot of the issues that somebody who's in early recovery goes through. So to an extent, I kind of got off lucky with that. But yeah, that is one thing that I know is going to rear its ugly head eventually. I think that'll be probably the toughest thing for me to deal with is them going through anything like that. Because unfortunately, I have pretty deep family history of it. But they've, with some of the falls and breaks that they've had, that's their mother. Some of the stuff they've already done, like the stupid things they've done to break things, or as we did the one show of the clang, I'm okay. That's their mother more than me. Down to their mother deciding to make monkey bread this morning, and as I was cutting the lawn, me coming into a house full of smoke.
Sorry, monkey bread?
Smoked monkey bread. It's really good.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see it, but it's a pull-apart bread. That's a sweet pull-apart bread. That this is actually just like a Pillsbury thing, where you just stick it in the oven. But there was the sugar. If you can tell, there's a lot of glaze on it. Dripped out of the thing she had. She had it in a springform pan, and it kind of leaked out into the bottom of the oven. And
I'm still stuck on what it's called, but okay. Anyway.
It's good.
It's southern.
Monkey bread is good.
Doug will be able to tell you about monkey bread. Doug knows
Hey,
what monkey.
we haven't heard from Doug on the subject of nature versus nurture. What's going on with Doug?
Oh no, I was just trying to formulate and think about some different things. And my boys, I was going to say, well, Colin especially, one of the things is we have a deep respect for church and God and stuff. And that's been instilled in our boys, and and how to do things. And sometimes your nature says things are okay, where the nurture part of our religious background also teaches our boys that what things aren't okay. And with Colin, we notice a lot when it's come to like either his friends, like the face and property was one, and or stealing. Colin is the first one to point that out, and it bothers him greatly. Or even when his friends are disrespecting each other, that's another thing where he's like a big either he just like always it troubles him and hurt as well as the person, and he always has to stand up for the other person and explain to the group why it's wrong. So there's that. And Brendan is very much like a confidant to his friends, and a lot of his friends like come to him with a lot of issues and stuff and seek his advice even at the age of 15. And I'm surprised how much things like kids don't tell their parents, but they'll tell each other. And the amount that come to Brendan and then he shares with us or says, well, this is what I said. What do you think? Is that accurate? Is that how I should have? And we're like, yeah, wow. But definitely the quietness of both boys comes from me. And the jovial laughing out loud part that sometimes gets underneath my skin, how they could just like start laughing and then not be able to control themselves, comes from the wife.
I had a feeling you were going to say that because some of the videos you put up of you dancing and doing things like that. It's a very identifiable laugh, and I pretty much deduced from the first one that you posted that it was your wife.
Yeah.
but I understand with the confidant thing. I was the same way, and I actually see that in Delana right now. Mercedes only 7, so right now at 7, they still kind of run with their parents. The thing is, with also being at 7 and being in the pandemic that we had the last year and a half, they weren't around each other a lot, so it's a little bit more difficult. But Delana, when she's been around a friend, I've seen that a lot. Now, there's another interesting thing that happened last night. We were at dinner. We went to a restaurant by us, and Delana asked me, started talking about music. Delana's gotten into, like, the things she's gotten into are clearly like a lot of the stuff that I'm into. And she asked me 2 songs, 2 people who my favorite song was. One of them was One Direction, and the other one was Ed Sheeran. And both times I only mentioned like a couple of words from it because I didn't remember the name of the songs. And within seconds of finishing what I was saying, Delana was able to say, is it this song? I was like, yeah, that's it. Both times. And Elise just looked at Delana and went, how did you? And then she looked at me and went, oh yeah. She literally looks and went, I forgot who her father was for a second. I just kind of chuckled, and she goes, you're the same way. She goes, you can do that. She goes, you just didn't. I was like, I just didn't know, I don't know One Direction and Ed Sheeran well enough to be able to do that with them. So yeah. And again, some of the Delana is obsessed with, like, if she sees something, watches something, she becomes obsessed with it and wants to know everything about it, similar to the way I do, and to the things I do with that. And honestly, Delana knows more about Harry Potter, I think, than anyone I've ever met. And she's only seen the movie. She hasn't even read the books yet. So she's almost finished with the first one. So it is one good thing that I am glad she's interested in something like that. I'm not gonna be a hard ass about what the thing is if it isn't that bad. Harry Potter's not that bad. So her being inquisitive about that, I'm like, yeah, go. I kind of push her to be inquisitive and things like that. So, and Delana's the same way with jujitsu. Like, she's like, I walked in and I know a lot of the voices who do the videos and that, and I'm like, oh, that's this Gracie and that Gracie, and yep, she's watching a UFC video of how to do this. So, an MMA video of how to do this. So, yeah, that's certainly starting to rub off on her.
I can think back to, when I was younger, my parents were divorced from the time I was 2. So I didn't spend a lot of time with my dad. And I would say, it's probably 90% of the time growing up, I was with my mom. But at the same time, I've got a very similar kind of personality profile to what he does, like in terms of like temper wise. Like, it takes a lot to get me upset. But when I get upset, there ain't no stopping me. I'm like a exploding pig of dynamite, but it takes a lot to get me there. That's how he was. But then when I look at Frankie is just so peaceful and like I don't know that I've seen him mad probably 1 time, 2 times maybe in his life. But I think part of that is the nurture piece as well. Like Doug was saying, church is important to us too. And so he went to the Catholic school, and every day they would have the prayers, and they would say, and the last thing that the principal would say every day was, and remember, be a peacemaker in the world. And so I think that's part of the reason why he's, after having 5 or 6 years of that every day put into him, it helps him to be a peacemaker. And then the other thing is his personality. I wonder about his personality because I'm very type A, like I'm results oriented. I'm like, if I've got something to do, it's like I'm getting it done. I'm like I'm a go-getter, right? But he's much more like, oh yeah, it'll get done. Don't worry, Dad, it'll get done. And it drives me crazy. but I wonder if he developed that kind of the opposite, kind of a relaxed personality in relation to my kind of stressed out one. Like, and he's just like, I can't do anything. I can't do anything for my own man. So I'm just going to kind of relax here, and as opposed to getting wound up as well, like I did.
Your kids are my kids. Oh my God.
Yeah, it may not be that that your ex-wife is the complete opposite of that, because it could just be legitimately rebelling against it is a bad phrasing for it, but taking the opposite tact is a better explanation for it than saying rebelling against it.
Right.
But yeah, I could definitely see that. You know, that yeah. Elise and I have both tendencies to have the tendency to do both. Where we'll be, rush, get it done. And then there's times where that's both of us will do we'll do the opposite of what we had just done. And the one time that there's a real problem is when both of us go, oh, we can do it later. And that's a tendency to happen and really fuck things up sometimes.
One of the weird things that I don't know how to say, well, how it exactly fits, but it does. Colin, when the temperatures really bother him, he hates being like cold. He'll friggin' put blankets on while watching television. He'll sleep in his room with no air conditioning on. He always says he's cold. Now, my mother is exactly the same way. Another thing that Colin can't stand, he'll come into the house and he's like, what are you cooking? I can't take that. Or he'll come to dinner and he's like, oh, the smell from dinner. He's like, it's making me sick. I have to go in the other room. My mother has the same exact problem with smells too. And a lot of the food, different textures of food, makes her sick as well. Like eggplant, tomatoes, and it's the same thing with
Really?
Colin. Like literally, he gets like sick from it. Like, and I'm like, how did he? Like, he's not around my mom that much, but only because of distance, that we don't see them that often. But exactly the same things that turn my mother off are the same things that Colin is turned off by. So we call him Little Linda.
It could just be that it's there, that the trait is there. They don't have to be around her,
Wait a second. Does Colin get ticked off when we curse in these podcasts too?
Oh yeah. He gets ticked off when anybody curses.
I like that kid. All right.
He'll tell us, like, and he'll, especially on a Sunday. Oh, forget it.
Oh, don't bring him near my kids. Oh, bring him near the girls. Ever.
I have to say, in this house, when the boys are here, this whole nature versus nurture thing, they're very much a product of imitating behaviors that they like, and clearly, I don't want to say rebelling against the ones they don't like, but clearly not following them. So
taking the opposite tact.
Their argumentation style is very quiet, which you could say is either a reflection of me or a taking the opposite tact from another role model they once had in the house. Family first, family loyalty, same way.
Mm-hmm.
Because they grew up in an environment where somebody always said that they wanted to leave and wanted to abandon them, and they got very frustrated by that. And the words permanently scarred is probably a little strong, but they're probably not far from the truth.
Mm-hmm.
When you threaten to leave in front of a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, and you do this like weekly or even several times a week.
Yeah.
There's no doubt that their attitude toward our connection, our family unit, has been heavily impacted by that. To the positive, I would say. We're very, very tight knit, and always there for each other, kind of thing.
it isn't rebelling because it's not, because there's a difference between rebelling and just kind of going the opposite way.
I mean, it's the same way for me. I mean, when I was growing up, I watched my parents, and there were certain things I said, yeah, good idea, and certain things I'm like, I'm never doing that shit.
Right.
And I've held true to much of that, although sometimes I do find myself sliding a little bit toward the stuff I thought I would never do.
Right.
And I'm sure, you know, our kids will do somewhat of the same thing, but you know, my boys, and I'm sure there are things that their mother did that they thought are good, and they're going to, you know, replicate and what have you. And other things that they might not emulate, or maybe there's some things, I'm sure there's some things about me that maybe aren't quite what they want to imitate. At least if they're smart. I don't know. We'll see how time tells on that one. But
I'm surprised. I was gonna say, I'm surprised at how much my kids haven't done yet. And I'm like, wow, because we had kids stay over for Brendan's birthday party last week. So they were like, oh, you know, and the mother's like, well, if they do anything, you could just punish them and you have the right to holler. I was like, all right, I don't think there's anything really going to happen at sleepover, but thanks. And yeah, sleepover, they were like, yeah, we stayed up talking till like 3 a.m. I was like, dude, when I was a kid staying over at my cousin's house, we were sneaking out of the house or coming home at like 3 a.m. at this age. We were out drinking and like everything. Like by time we were 15, I mean, by time we were like 13, like, you know?
Yep.
And yeah, I haven't seen any of that or even an inkling that they're looking to do things like that. Like,
this is a Chad question. Let me throw this at Chad because he's the only one with a kid close to my kid's age. I got the sense that Justin and Jeremy had started to form habits or behaviorisms that kind of looked a little bit like their parents, particularly me, when they were in their late single digits, early teen years. But as the teen years went on, they got toward 20, that's when it really solidified. Like when you start looking in the mirror and saying, oh my God, it's like looking in the mirror at, you know, when I look at these kids, it gets much more pronounced, at least it did in my family, as they got close to and into college. There was, you know, it's just a matter of maturation, formation of personalities, I guess. But it really, really became incredibly pronounced in the last like 3 or 4 years. And of course, Justin, 5th year.
What in particular are you talking about? What traits in particular?
Literally the sound in the voice, the inflection in the voice, the way they handle situations.
Okay.
You know, there's a certain calmness to them. In fact, it drives me completely nuts until I realize it's me all over again. They have this unending belief that no matter what goes wrong, it'll work out. And it drives me completely nuts every time until I stop and remember each time I taught them that by role modeling all the time. They're literally an exact reflection of me. But, you know, as an older person now, I'm like, you know, you get a little antsy because you don't want things to go bad for them. But if you just followed your own teachings, you know everything will be fine.
Right.
But that stuff really didn't start screaming loud imitation or reflection, I think until mid-teens to late teens into college years. I don't know when that's really started happening with Frankie. That's what I was sort of getting at, was did it become more pronounced as he got toward his 20s?
Yeah, I would agree 100%. It was definitely more pronounced. You know, I probably started noticing it his junior and senior year in high school. You know, if we go out to eat or if we'd be somewhere together, there were times and I'd hear him say something or see him do something. I'd be like, you know, it's like one of those things where it's like, how old were you when you understood this? It's like, and I had that aha moment. It's like, oh, he's doing what I'm doing or what I have done, or he's doing what I have told him to do. Like, I'm like, yes, he's catching on to some of these things. He's not ignoring everything that I say. But to your point too, like sometimes, you know, I'll try to put him at ease if there's something that goes wrong. Like he had a car accident or something, and he was very afraid to call me about that. And I'm like, are you okay? and he was telling me about it, and the other guy was being a real jerk to him because he was, he's a 16, 17-year-old kid, and he got in an accident, and there was some college kid that was just giving him heck. Hey, don't worry about it. I said, we're going to get this taken care of. I said, just get the kid's number, get his name, let's get it exchanged. So we're okay. I said, the sun's going to come up tomorrow, but that relates kind of to what you say about everything's going to work itself out. Right. And so I think for him, some of that, and I use it, whenever I see him getting especially stressed out. I'm like, hey, listen, I'm like, don't get so stressed. I'm like, we're okay, because I'll stress myself to the max, but I don't want other people to be stressed to the max, if you know what I mean. So I always try to, like, once I see people kind of hitting what I perceive to be that limit, then I try to alleviate it a little bit. I'm like, hey, don't worry, sun's going to rise tomorrow. We're going to be fine. We're going to work through this. So I've seen some of that too, but to your point, yes, I definitely, as his age, junior, senior year, and now especially, I see more and more of things that I have taught him shining through. I'll say shining through. Hopefully, most of them shining through, because I've got some bad habits too. I hope he doesn't pick up on that. I'm very aware of them, and I've tried to talk to him about them. But it's a lot of it is, can you talk somebody out of something that they see and they learn? You know what I mean? But anyway, yeah. So to your point, Keith, yes, I see more and more of my behavior shining through.
It sounds like you're very much like me in the whole solution-oriented approach. Okay, whatever the problem is, let's not dwell on the problem. Let's dwell on the solutions.
Yeah.
Just as a side note, and just because I'm an ass, I'm going to say this. I've always been that way. Okay, let's not panic. But whining about the problem is the solution. Let's come up with answers. And let's just say I always felt that there was somebody else in this house who didn't necessarily feel that way. And the reason I bring it up is because she never felt that way in the house. But since we've gotten divorced, she's become a lot more solutions oriented. So it's been a little easier to talk to her, which I've found very interesting. So maybe the whole being in the environment had more of an effect, not just on the kids, but maybe that other person too. But we're not going to go there.
Yeah.
Jason looks like he wants to say something about that. You still haven't had the pleasure of meeting her, have you?
No.
Okay.
It just baffles me sometimes how she put up with your OCD for as long as she did.
Oh, I have none of that. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, okay.
I'm waiting to see how much of that is, gets bred into the boys, because right now it's not a whole lot, but you can tell it's starting to happen. You can tell there are things.
Absolutely.
If you look at the recent pictures I posted of Jeremy's dorm room, which he completely set up himself, you can see the way my brain works and the way he set up the room and all that stuff. So I think that it's starting to seep in and very quickly, like floodwaters, if you will. Yeah, so it's interesting you say that. Yeah, I have no idea what you mean. OCD, I've no clue. It's not in my family.
One thing that Keith said that was interesting, he also mentioned environment, and how I was just thinking about how environment, it affects my children and their learning. And it's pretty cool because living in a small town like Bath, that's very small, very tight knit. We do a lot of things with the town bonfires, they have lots of things going on all the time in our town that it really affects our boys in the way that they live and the way that their friends and stuff like that, compared to their cousins who live in a greater, more metropolis area, and the way the value of things is a lot different, with what you have, what your possessions are, where my kids are very more simplistic and don't really aren't in tune to a lot of that stuff. And it greatly shows when they're all together, just a difference in where they live, affects also, how they're growing up. So, being outdoors and stuff like that, it's just greatly different here compared to where they are, being around, loving to be out in the garden and with their friends out in the parks and stuff here, and being part of the like little things like events I said that the town does all the time. You know, I think is a big difference.
I remember, yeah, you say that. I don't think you were at Keith's house for the barbecue more than what, maybe 2 minutes, and the boys were gone. You know, the boys were outdoor already. So, at the little park there, that
Yeah, they eyed that up, pull it in. Go ahead, sorry.
What did you say? They eyed that up as soon as you pulled in. Yeah,
Yeah.
I figured that, and I had a feeling that could happen because of the, you know, we've seen all the pictures and stuff you put up. So that seems to be their MO. So it was like, okay, you know, I turned around, went to do something, and I was like, well, they're gone. Okay, it's a big surprise, you know. So that yeah, 100%, I could see that.
Well, and to Doug's point, also, like I grew up in a small town, and I had a lot of advantages growing up in that small town. I mean, we had 2,000 people. It was a farming community, and I had advantages in certain respects because I could participate in athletics that I would have had in a bigger school. You know, I did okay in athletics, but I wasn't going to make the team in a big school. But I was able to participate, and you know, 3 seasons of the year I was participating whatever I wanted to.
Mhm.
And then on the other side of the coin, you know, my parents knew everybody, so there were times when, you know, if I would have lived in a bigger city, I would have gotten in some real trouble, but I didn't. And all the cops knew my parents. So they'd be like, Chad, don't do that. You do that. You just go home or call your mom to come pick you up. Or, you know, there's all this stuff. There was like a lot. It was very informal. It wasn't, we're going to give you a ticket. We're going to take you down. You need to call your parents. We're going to take your fingerprints to start a file on you and those kinds of things. You know what I mean? I mean, the chief of police would come over to our house for New Year's Eve. So there are a lot of I mean, even in school, you know, everybody knows your parents. So on the one hand, I guess that kind of kept me out of trouble in terms of when I did something stupid, but also I think it kind of kept me in line because everywhere I turned, there was somebody I knew.
Right.
Well, let's be realistic. There's a big file on Chad somewhere. There's no doubt.
Somewhere there is, for sure.
I'm sure it has something to do with the landlord thing. I'm sure somewhere along the way.
Yeah.
And it's funny you mentioned that party, Jason, because you notice the difference, like you said, Doug's kids, regardless of small town, big town, whatever, but Doug's kids are at an age where, yeah, they may jet off to what's down the block, you know, the playground and such. Sure. And you notice my kids settle right into the middle of the adults, who, by the way, there's a method and a reason why they did that. They see them as the enemy. They see the adult world as all the people who have screwed up the environment, the politics, and all that. So they're ready to have those discussions.
Right. Right.
So they're not afraid to sit right amongst all the adults in the room. And that's why they, you know, Justin and Kate especially were right outside hanging out with us for quite a while. Of course, the only reason Jeremy hung out with us because Dave was so big into the Marvel series, and that was his key, of course. But they had a 2-hour conversation over that stuff. But they also were raised in an environment to find similarities. Mm-hmm. They're both college kids, and they, you know, they're you know, you would think that they'd be more into their phones and such, but they grew up, you know, with me, and I'm, you know, this big networking dude who runs networking events and all that stuff. So I'm seeing some of that stuff rub off where they can actually hold conversations and talk to people, which is shocking, but welcome.
But it's awesome. I've seen that with Frankie as well. Like, because I'm big. Like, I was thinking about this, I don't know, a few weeks ago. Like, I don't think other than like a pizza job. Well, actually, that job, I don't know that I've ever gotten a job in my life that wasn't through networking. Every job that I've had, somebody said, "Hey, you should apply for this," or "Hey, you should do this." I've never submitted an application cold anywhere and gotten any. You know, I mean, it's all been, "Hey, apply here, or do this, or we're starting this, come join us," or. And I've always explained that to Frankie and told him how important it is that he talks to people, and you know, and I tell him what my mom told me, and that's like, have people talk about something they like themselves, ask them lots of questions about themselves, and then find those similarities, right? So you know, a bunch of my buddies and I go out to Phoenix golfing. And then so Frankie comes over for a couple of those days with some of his buddies. And so we're kind of partying together and stuff, but they're just like old friends. It's like these young college guys with my old man buddies, you know, sitting there, and they're all just like shooting, very, very comfortable talking to each other. And, you know, and it's
Linda. Oh, sorry.
but I mean, it's nice to see that, because that's what they need to do in the real world. And I said, you know, you'll find very quickly who you kind of match up with and who you don't. You'll find out who your friends are and who you form your friendships with that way.
So we're right on the borderline of, is this a nature versus nurture conversation, or is this a good way to parent versus not properly parent conversation? Because kids, you know, let's face it, kids who are raised right, socialize better, take advantage of educational opportunities better, are more well-rounded, that kind of thing. And the ones who do not get the guidance that they should through the proper parenting often miss out on that sort of thing. And that's true in most economic categories, even in the richer groups. If the parents aren't there to guide in some way, unless they've appointed guardians and, butlers and cooks and such, who are going to take that role, the kids don't know. They learn through guidance. All of us seem to have done a pretty reasonable job in that area, and that's a good thing for all of those kids.
I was gonna say, and another thing is also ourselves as examples in our own public life. Because like I was thinking about, I was a scoutmaster and all, well, for the Cub Scouts for a bunch of years. And I touched, I think I touched a lot of lives. But one kid in particular, Tykeem, came from a broken family. He spent a lot of time at my house, well, there was nobody to pick him up or something. So now Tykeem stayed at my house, And how many times this boy who's now nearly, going off to college, and he friended me on Facebook, and now he carries on about how much he's learned from me and being around my family, so much, and I was like, wow, it makes me proud that I actually was part of that.
You should be proud of that. That's awesome.
We're going into a direction here that usually at a conversation like this we usually go into, and it's something that maybe we should explore. Actually, I think we explored it once before, but maybe re-explore it again, and that's communication. Not that communication, including nonverbal communication and things like that. We're kind of obviously pointing in that direction again with this. So maybe for next week, we go more into that part of it again, like I said, because a lot's changed, obviously, since we had hit on something like that. And changes in situations could go a long way to a nice discussion next week and going into that. So, but another thing about that to bring up about that party you brought up, Dave, who actually I'm thinking about this now, we probably should have had him on with us while we did this, not realizing we were going to talk about this, but we talk about in a way to describe something like this. In some instances, it's being a chip off the old block, so to speak. As with Dave, it was quite clear that his kids are chiseled from the same cloth that he is, 100%.
More so than mine, which was absolutely, it was remarkable. It was like twins all over the place.
Yeah, I was watching them, and I'd see, and then they'd say something and went, "Oh, that's her father. That's Dave." Like,
again.
We know someone who knows their mother. Well, at least Crystal and I do. And from what we gather of their mother, she's quite an interesting woman. but yeah, Dave has done wonders for his kids as well. I mean, his kid, I've never, been said, please and thank you, and well-behaved kids like that, just did it, but that seems like that's him, and that's definitely something that was nurture from him for sure. So yeah, that was an interesting party. Actually ended up being a pretty interesting case study in parenting.
Yes, but we're not going to go into the other cases. We'll just, okay, never mind.
I was going to say, Jason, you use the analogy of chip off the old block, and in certain families, you could say the nut doesn't fall far from the tree.
That's
Well put in this family. Oh yeah.
But and Keith, you were talking about how people of all income ranges help and nurture their kids. And I remember seeing, I've got some friends who are very wealthy. And when I look at their children, they go to these schools that they're like colleges, like a high school that has its own planetarium. I mean, what the heck is that about? I mean, these kids just have this phenomenal education. And they're taught to be professionals from the time they're young. Like, you'll see them come in at 15 years old with the family. At 16, they're already driving their BMW, and they come in their khaki pants and their button-up shirt and their ties and jackets. I mean, it's just like they're taught to be executives, and they're taught to be what their parents are from a very early age as well. And I want to say, on the other end of that continuum, there are families that are where you have a mother who's working extra hard to support the family, and perhaps a father who's absent. And so the children aren't being taught these things through the nurturing aspect that many other people in society are. So they're really at a disadvantage from that, because they're not picking up on the ways to behave, the ways to act, and I don't want to sound to get too much in a gender, but the ways to be a man, the ways to be a woman, and those kinds of things. They have to be taught how to do this stuff, and they're just left to their own devices, and they might learn from their friends or from TV or other sources, but it just does not bode well for our society. I don't believe, and then that's certainly if somebody can manage that, but I think single family homes, it makes it difficult, because the problem is it's really not a single parent home. The single parent is out working to support that home. That's can be the issue. And then the second thing I want to bring up is, certainly we hope that our children learn very good things from us. And, what I'm concerned about with some of the things, as I said earlier, is that sometimes not so good things have been learned, I think, because, I see one thing that I wish I did better was I wish I was a better relationship guy. I wish I don't like the number of divorces I've had. I don't like, all those kinds of things. And, I tell Frankie, I'm like, listen, I go, don't do like your dad. I go, you got to find somebody, wait till you're older. And I kind of tell him, I said, because this is not the way to live your life. I said, starting over all the time. I said, it's something I had to do, or that I did, but at the same time, it's not something that I really want for you. If you can prevent that, I want you to be happy, but there's a lot of ups and downs in life with those kinds of things.
I think that my kids have taken that guidance without me giving that guidance. They are bound and determined not to repeat the sins of the parents. That's for sure. I mean, you never can predict ahead of time, but they're not in any rush in either case. Of course, they're very young, but by the time I was 22, which is Justin's age, let's just say I spent time in the company of quite a few young ladies, and Justin's on girlfriend number 2. And the first one only lasted 4 months. The second one's over 5 years. I think he's much more selective and much more dedicated, perhaps, than I was at that age. Wouldn't be difficult to be more dedicated, but he certainly learns to. He's certainly learned to not replicate my behavior in that regard. But I think, clearly, you watch a good marriage, you usually have a good marriage. You watch a bad one, you either replicate or you learn how to avoid. And I think that he and his girlfriend, and Jeremy and his girlfriend, they both are. They're all studying me to make sure they don't do some of that stuff because it did not go well.
Yeah. Yep.
Doug, I'm getting very drunk watching you. You got to stop turning the camera like that.
Had an itch.
Oh man, I was getting dizzy. You were spinning on me.
I saw you picking your nose.
Yeah, I saw you. As the stop sign goes by, yeah, I say, stop that. Yeah, anything to add, Jason? What do you think?
Anybody have anything they want to add before it? Because I know you were pressed up against a little bit of a time crunch here, right?
Yes, I am the pain today. I have a nice wedding to go to. I haven't been to a wedding in several years. So this is a
You just went to one a couple of months ago.
wedding.
As a plus one, I thought.
Oh God, I don't count that one. See, I didn't know the people there, so I didn't. I was there to literally stand at the open bar. That was it. But I wasn't paying attention to that. Yes, I was at a wedding in June. But that tells you how much the wedding itself impacted me because I wasn't paying attention to it. Now these are actual friends of mine, and I'm going by myself. I haven't seen people I know tie the knot in years. It's really interesting. I'm at an age where my friends aren't doing that sort of thing, and if they escape the bondage from earlier, they're not doing it again. So.
Along those lines, Vince is getting married in 2 weeks, so I'll be going to that wedding.
Hey, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Is he getting married to the person who we keep seeing in the background of the calls from?
Yes.
I hope so.
Well, we haven't seen it recently, but I'm saying, we did see somebody in the background a while back.
Yes.
Wasn't that long ago?
It feels like we haven't seen him in 6 months.
Probably.
Yeah, probably.
Well, I mean, well, please give him our congratulations.
Yes.
And Jason, I guess to kind of finalize some thoughts here, one of the things I think about with this nature versus nurture, if it's nature, they're going to do it, right? They're going to have the biological characteristics like their parents, or possibly a personality like their parents. But the nurture stuff, especially for new parents, the lesson for them is your children are always watching, whether you know it or not, and they are learning from you, whether you are teaching them something or you're just doing something. They're learning from you. So it's important how you behave in front of them, because they will pick it up
At any age.
at any age.
I think that's a pretty good place to leave us, as everybody probably has something they've got to take care of. Keith, have a good time at the wedding.
Thank you, sir.
And from all of us here at Dad's on Life, take care, everybody.
Signing off.
Have a good one, everybody.
Take care.